Hello.
Hello. Are you Graham Dixon?
Yes, I am.
Are you the director of the Michael Chekhov Studio London?
Yes.
Oh, and is it here the studio at Tooting?
Yes, the studio is just here at the back of the garden.
Oh. Great, that's the right place.
That's where the studio is, yes.
And can we have a chat?
Yes, we can have a chat in the studio. Shall we do that?
Okay, great. Let's do that.
Good. Would you like some coffee before we
Oh yeah.
go into the studio?
Yeah, I'd love to have some coffee.
Okay, I'll just make it.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Just this way.
Okay.
Come in. Well, what are your questions?
So, where are you now in your work, and how did you develop the Michael Chekhov approach throughout all those years of teaching and touring with your company?
Well, I think what I've developed after all those years of performing and directing and touring with the company and all the workshops I've done all over the years, I've developed an overall holistic approach, and I've called it the 5 pillars of acting freedom. And what does that mean? Let me start with the first one, which is the fundamental one and the most important one, and that's the connection between our physical body and our inner life. Now, I don't like using the term physical body because that's like anything that's physical, but this body is living, it animates, and this physical body actually moves and shows what's happening on the inside of a person, on their character, on their psychology, you could say. So I call that number 2, the inner life. I like numbers because they have no baggage. And the physical body, our instrument, I call number 1. So that first pillar could be called a familiar term, which is psychophysical. That's number 1 and number 2, and how do they connect? It's not just 1 and 2, we also give to the world as actors. We've got to go out to the world and give to an audience. I call that world, again, because there's no baggage to it, number 3. So it's not just 1 and 2 as a polarity, but 1 and 2 and 3. You could say all of those exercises in that first pillar is about movement. You've got to move with your number 1 to get number 2 moving. Now, of course, number 2 can move first, and it flows down into number 1, and you can see the result of what's happening in the inner life in number 2. Like a memory, you'd go, oh yeah, I remember, I was just a little boy and I was climbing a tree. Can you see? That is remembering something that starts in number 2 as a memory. From that, the spin-off in all the other movement exercises, you can see it is like you would have at a drama school, the movement department. But now what are the movements we do? They connect to a principle. Moving in space to get number 2 moving. That leads us into the 4 relationships to the air. It leads us into the 4 directions in space, plus the other 2, making it 6, which is left and right, forward and back, and up and down. And from that, we look at other movement exercises, how to get resistance, how to get freedom, how to get ease, how to get form, how to get freedom to an impulse that comes, and also how we actually sustain or radiate to an audience. And they're all movement exercises, but not just number 1 exercises. Now, let me quickly go through the other 4, because the first one is the principle. You could call that the basics, actually. The next one I call about perception. And what do? I still move, of course, with the physical body, but I use a ball, and I go into the ball exercises very, very purely as giving. I throw the ball. Someone receives it, and then do they stay in receiving? Or like a machine, do they just give it out again? So it's not in, out, which is mechanistic. There's a third element with that, as there is with almost everything. It's not polarity anymore. There's a third element, the in-between. So then that ball exercises helps us to how to read a script, go out, how to receive the words, what happens inside you, changing over to give them. It's a basic element of how we perceive. It's a branch of philosophy called epistemology, which simply means, how do I get knowledge from the world? What's that basic process? The ball allows us to see the fundamental elements of pure perception. I mean, in a way, it's almost impossible to have pure perception, but for the actor, it's a basis. It's the chassis, that's that which you ride on. The next one, and I've taken that really and been inspired by Michael Chekhov. There's a chapter in his book, To the Actor, called Improvisation and Ensemble. What does that mean? The way we develop that work of improvisation is to lead to an end. It's a means to an end, not an end in itself, just to improvise. And introverts hate it. Oh God, I've got to improvise what I come up with. Extroverts really love it, and they're very, very good at it. But what are we doing? Why are we improvising? We're improvising to connect into that other part of ourselves, what Chekhov called the higher creative self. And what I give it a number. I give it number 5. The next pillar is, well, we could say again, it's from the Chekhov book, outer atmospheres and inner feelings. How do we develop that? How does an actor create an atmosphere? Do they feel an atmosphere and expect that to come outside into number 3? How do they create feelings that is not just pushing from themselves, going back into the old affective memory of Stanislavski? But how do I actually create feelings that doesn't require me to go back into a memory of the past? That I can actually bring it freshly and new. And the word there is sensation. What is the sensation of doing a movement, like lifting an arm, with the sensation of, and then what you want will come to you. Then it's a true feeling or emotion or mood or attitude or thought. The next pillar is the landscape of imagination. It's a whole world. What is that landscape? How do we get to it? How do we get to it so that it really is not just images we brought from ourselves, but they're new, fresh images that will come to us? And then that's, how many have I given? The number 1 and number 2 and number 3, the ball. Then we talked about the world of improvisation and inner feelings. And already I've doubled up on numbers, haven't I? So we have to now bring one of those, and let's say improvisation and ensemble feeling, or maybe it's best to say that we've got the atmosphere and ensemble could go to another pillar. I mean, this is all holistic in that sense. Oh, there's only 5. We'll look at 5 pillars. It's not formulaic, but I simplify it to 5. The landscape of imagination, and the last one, how we speak. What's the word? How do we do it? What about voice and speech? Are they 2 things together? I call that 5th principle the word, and all that comes from that. And from that, then, on that pillar, I could put improvisation. yes, and linking in to your higher creative self.
So thank you so much for this amazing explanation of the essence of your work. I'd love to go further with the first pillar. So could you explain me more in detail all the different aspects of it?
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
So what could we start with?
Well, why don't we start with a very fundamental exercise, which I call optimum position. And what does that mean? It's getting the right position for your instrument to play on.
So could we do that now?
Well, unfortunately I have a student coming in 30 minutes, but I'd definitely like to do that when you visit again.